Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to be here with authors Kirsten Imani Kasai and Gavin James Bauer, who also happen to be tutors on our ultimate novel writing course here at Jericho Writers. We're really excited to have them on board for this next spring intake. So what I thought we would do today is just get them here to answer any of the questions that you might have about writing, about getting published, just anything that's on your mind, really. They've both been there and done that, so really good sources of information, really good people to just kind of run your ideas past as well. If you've got an idea for a novel and you want to kind of sense check it with someone who has a feel for what the publishing industry is looking for, also who teaches creative writing. Do just kind of pop your ideas into the chat, pop your questions into the chat, and we'll do our very best to answer them for you today. So just to kick us off, I thought I'd just tell you a little bit more about Gavin and Kirsten. So Gavin James Bauer was born and grew up in Lancashire. He graduated with a degree in history from the University of Sheffield before modelling in Paris and later working as an editor and publisher in London. He's the author of 2 novels, Dazed and Aroused and Made in Britain, and 1 non-fiction title, Claude Cahun, The Soldier of No Name, for which he received a Society of Authors Award. He now lives in Somerset and teaches creative writing at Bath University, and his journalism has featured in The Guardian, The Independent Sunday, The Sunday Telegraph, and many more. I won't name all of them. And he also joined EastEnders in 2014, writing several episodes for the show. Gavin enjoys working with writers of contemporary fiction, short story collections, and creative nonfiction. And we also have Kirsten Imani Kasai with us today. So Kirsten celebrates literature as a change agent that pushes us out of our comfort zones, taking us apart and remaking us. She is the author of 3 novels, The House of Azuli, a Gothic tale set in 1850s New Orleans, and the speculative fiction series I Song and Tattoo, both published by Penguin Random House. According to Forward Reviews, Kirsten makes the macabre beautiful. Kirsten is a PhD candidate in Gothic Research Studies at Manchester Metropolitan University, focused on feminine power in historical witchcraft. She has an MFA in creative writing from Antioch University, Los Angeles, and teaches graduate creative writing and literature with a focus on amplifying marginalized voices. Currently, she lives with her wife in Texas, where she quietly advocates for introvert rights from the privacy of her home. Kirsten loves working with writers of literary, historical, speculative fiction, horror, gothic, science fiction, paranormal, fantasy, folklore, and hybrid experimental, as well as memoirs. Meanwhile, Gavin enjoys working with writers of contemporary fiction, short story collections, and creative nonfiction. So if you're out there and you're looking to be mentored by a writer who will help you get your book published in the next 12 months, do check out our website and have a look at the Ultimate Novel Writing course, of which we're really lucky to have these 2 fantastic writers mentoring with us for the 2023 course. So let's get started. Let's start with you, Kirsten. Could you explain a little bit about your approach to writing fiction and how you kind of get a project off the ground?
Oh my gosh. So I tend to be kind of a slower writer. I go through this kind of dreamy, putting it all together stage where I'm accumulating ideas and thinking about where I might take them, asking a lot of questions. And then I kind of wait until I get some sort of specific image, or perhaps it's like a single sentence or a scene. And I consider that my entry point into a story, and then I can start writing. So it's a process of kind of feeling around in my consciousness and in the collective subconscious, seeing what the zeitgeist is, and then just looking for that open door that will allow me to access the story and meet the characters and discover the voice of the piece.
Oh, fantastic. Do you generally know how a story is going to end when you first start writing it, or is it something that kind of comes later in the process?
I usually have an idea of where I want to go, but sometimes there's a lot of surprises along the way. Sometimes we detour.
Yeah.
Often I've had the characters make their own decisions. and tell me that no, they're going to do something different than I had planned. So I kind of liken that process to taking a road trip where I have an idea of the end destination, but I'm not sure how I'm going to get there. So it's kind of a meandering, like, let's see what kind of adventures we have along the way experience.
Fantastic. Yeah, I love that analogy. I think it's so kind of encompassing of the writing process. Gavin, would you say that also rings true for you, or do you have a different experience when you're?
It does ring true. I think I have a fantastic sense of direction, but I always make poor choices when it comes to which way to go. I kind of feel like that when I visit a city. I know where I'm going, but I make poor decisions in terms of how to get there. So maybe that's another analogy that speaks to my creative process. I think that does ring true. Much of that, absolutely. I sit here and I'm thinking how much of a hypocrite I am, because I'll tell writers in the early stages, I'll quote Sid Field at them, and I'll be like, know your ending. You need to know where it's going, and it's not possible to do what you're doing, as if we've all got that locked in. When I know full well there's a huge amount of intuition going on.
Yeah.
And actually fun in the process of working out how to get somewhere and having a vague sense of how to get down to the river, but you don't know whether you take that road or that road, and you stumble across something when you take a left instead of a right. And that's true when you're navigating a new city or a vaguely familiar place. Maybe you've been there a couple of times. This analogy is getting tortured. This is unbelievable, this analogy now. I don't know what I'm doing. But it is a combination for me in terms of planning, really hardwired stuff, and trusting myself that I've done this before, I've been here before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And without that combination, I don't think I'd trust myself entirely one way or the other. So I wouldn't advocate entirely for it. This has to be totally planned out and known. And if you don't know it, you can't write it, because I think that frightens away the fun, the creative aspect. Equally, I wouldn't just tell you, be intuitive, just sort of let it go, let it come out however, and just work itself out, because without the practice, and practice being a really important word, it almost certainly won't work itself out.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So when you speak about practice, then would you say it's a case of committing yourself on a regular basis to either developing your skills or like developing that specific story? How would you define that?
Do you want another terrible analogy? I feel like we should just stick with terrible analogies for the rest of this.
Please. Yes, that can be the theme.
Otherwise it doesn't work. So it's like running. If you're a runner, if you say you want to run a marathon, you definitely don't wake up one day and just run a marathon. That definitely doesn't happen. You wouldn't be able to do it physically. So practice is, because it becomes about stretching, it becomes about training, it becomes about diet, it becomes about getting up every day and doing the 2K, the 3K, the 5K with a friend or a trainer. That you build up. And you build up and build up and build up until you can run those 26 miles. Yeah. It's the same with a novel. The novel is the marathon in this analogy. It's subtle, isn't it? But without the practice, it won't just come out. It won't just happen. So you've got to practice your skills. And part of that is, I think people approach this in different ways. Maybe they call it their morning pages, or they just need to get X amount of words out. Maybe it's just the rubbish that comes out first thing in the morning. You set yourself the target. I'll just write for 500 words or 1,000 words, fill that page up. That, I think, is about keeping supple, keeping sort of fit and ready, so that when you have the idea and the inspiration strikes, you are ready and able to commit to the long trek, the distance of doing the longer form thing, or the more serious thing, the thing that you really want to send out to people.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice for especially like first time authors. I think there's sometimes that expectation that you have this idea, and then maybe getting the really good idea is the difficult part, so then it's all just going to flow out of you, and very often that's not the case. And writers get a third through the novel and then hit this massive brick wall, and then very oftentimes we hear that people give up because they don't know how to make their way around it, and lose that commitment and that kind of, I guess, endurance in the way that you've just kind of spoke about very poorly, like building on that analogy, but they lose their ability to then keep pushing forward because they're not keeping up that momentum.
I'm not sure. The idea that the idea itself is the easy bit. Sometimes you can't get the inspiration. I understand you sort of struggle to find the inspiration of the ideas, but I don't know whether the initial bit, I don't know how you feel about this, Kirsten, sort of that initial, I've had a really cool idea. That feels to me like the fun bit, the kind of easy bit that comes. The hard bit is committing to it and turning it into something from there. When you run out of maybe a bit of steam, or you hit an obstacle, or it suddenly gets hard, again, not to go back to the long distance run, but it gets hard after a certain amount of time. That's the bit that you need to push through. And there's technique, and there's practice, and there's discipline, and I've been here before. It won't just work itself out, but you do need some of that free-flowing fun bit to get that's better to get you started.
There's always discussion in writing communities about whether people are plotters or pantsers. So you're either flying by the seat of your pants, or you're plotting everything out. And I think kind of taking a combined approach to that works really well. So I tend to pants it until I get to that stuck point. And then I'm like, okay, I need some structure. And then do a little bit of planning. It's like, back to the analogy of the road trip, stopping to look at the map.
Sure.
So like, okay, so we've got this much more to go. How much are we going to do a day? And really creating that structure. You say that a novel is a marathon, which I also use as well, but a short story is a sprint.
Right.
And in either of those, you have to understand the mechanics of what you're trying to do in order to, achieve it.
Yeah.
And really do well, because you can't just like start running and flailing around in the street.
I mean, absolutely. You think about whatever you're working on, so it's a novel, or it's a short story, or it's maybe in another medium, being aware of the mechanics, you're reading, you're watching, you're taking inspiration all the time. That's fueling you, that's your, I'm going to go there, I'm going to continue. That's your protein shake, that's the diet, that's the sustenance that you need. That's taking on water. That's all that stuff that you do, It's the map on the road trip, sure. It's whether it's a physical map, or like me, you've evolved over time and you use your phone for the map now instead of carrying around it's the road, whatever I don't know what the equivalent is in the States, but the road atlas, and the one over here where we unfold it. The map. Joey gets in the map, right? We don't do that necessarily now, but we still need some way to navigate. That's the technique side as well. So I was thinking about my process now. Not that I call it my process, but it's kind of fun to do that, my methodology. But that's evolved over time. I'm not starting a novel tomorrow in the same way that I did 15 years ago. And actually, I can't expect it to be exactly the same and come out in the same way. I'm a different person now. My practice is different. My experience is different. So the ideas don't work in the same way. If I went back and said, but my first 2 novels kind of came out in 2 months, but they didn't really, because there was so much before that. But in the writing bit, the first draft bit came out in 2 months, and then I held myself to that standard and said, well, you better write a novel in 2 months. If you can't do it, you're a failure, or you don't know how to do it anymore. That's not how I work. That's how I have worked. It's not necessarily going to be the case now. I just know I did it before. The fact that I know I did it before gives me a bit of belief that with the right idea, and a bit of wind behind me, I'll be able to do it again. It just might not look the same.
Yeah, there's a lot of passive writing. So I always tell people, when you see someone and they're sitting in front of their computer just staring off into space, it's like they're working.
We're working.
Right? Yeah. It's like shower thoughts, and your mind is always kind of cogitating on these ideas, and you might wake up with this like great line or great idea, or you solve a plot point in the story, and then you go write. And I think you kind of get lovely rewards along the way. Like if we go back again to our marathon analogy.
Let's do it.
The people that are waiting on the side and they give you, a bottle of Gatorade, or like throw a banana at you or whatever. You get those moments when you're writing where you're like, oh, that's a beautiful sentence, or like, I figured it out. And it's so rewarding. And so those are your little breadcrumbs that keep you moving forward. So there's a lot of reward that comes through that process, and it supplements the need for discipline and focus and routine, because you really do have to have a routinized process to be able to accomplish it within, you know, a certain time period.
Yeah, completely. I'm just curious, for those days, you know, when like just the words aren't coming and you're finding it really hard to, you know, just, you know, push through and keep going, or if there's, you know, there's been a spell of like just feeling, I guess, like in a bit of a writing funk, are there any kind of practices that you have in place to kind of help you push through that, or kind of, you know, give that project a new lease of life? Is there anything, Kirsten, that you do in particular to kind of help you move forwards?
Yes, that's such a great question. I actually have an arts background, and I tend to be a pretty visual thinker. So I've done things like, if I'm not feeling like I have a good grip on a character and feeling stuck, I'll put together a mood board or Pinterest board on that character, or I might draw pictures or draw, I do a lot of narrative diagrams and actually like illustrate it. And that kind of prompts my mind to think about the story structure and its elements in a really different way. And that really helps. It's like, oh, okay, now I can see it. So it's making sense to me in a way that it didn't when I was just like muddling through this sea of words in my mind, you know? So I think kind of switching modalities. Also, if you're stuck, sometimes you just need to take a moment away and like go garden, go bake some bread, go do something that is totally different. I think when you involve your hands, it's such a different mode of thinking and interacting with the world that it gives your mind like a little break. And then you can go back to that creative work like, okay, I feel rested and refreshed and I can tackle it again. And I think it's really important for newer writers, especially that don't have, you know, all of the experience and the years of training, to remember that this is not supposed to be a self-punishing exercise. I think very often in my experience working with new writers, you know, their expectations are so great. And then when they don't live up to those, or they hit that point where it gets really difficult and frustrating, it's very easy to lose momentum or think like, oh, I'm just not good at this, I give up. And even seasoned writers that have put out multiple novels go through these kind of crises of confidence or inspiration and keep going. It's just like anything in life, you know, you have your pity party for a day or an hour, and you pick yourself up and you keep going forward. So yes, I recommend doing anything with the hands or the body and using that kinetic energy to kind of work through whatever block you're having.
I love that advice. I think that's so helpful, because I think so often, you know, you just put so much focus on the words, and, you know, kind of it has to, like anything I do, has to be focused on the project itself, but kind of dispersing that energy and just giving yourself that kind of like breathing space, I think is just so important. So yeah, no, I think more writers should definitely kind of, I guess, be instilling those practices, I think. Gavin, is there anything else that you do that you find really helps?
Yeah, I want to say I keep an ideas sort of page or of notes, which is an evolving. It's a note in my phone that I could go to and can go to and do go to if I feel like I've got nothing to write about. I'm really stuck. Actually, for months on end and even longer, I'm compiling snippets. I'm overhearing things. You know, again, I feel a bit of a hypocrite. Oh, walk around, never leave the house without you know, a note. But we love that, us writers. We love telling people, oh, you've got to have a pen and paper. You know, and actually, in reality, you might not. You might just leave that. But you probably got your phone or something similar, so something that you can jot something down. Now, the danger is it stays there, it doesn't go anywhere. But actually, that notwithstanding, if you're stuck and you look, you realize actually there's stuff I can do something with this. I can recycle this. I can take a little snippet. That's enough. I can do a little bit of flash here. I can write a story here. I know I can get to the end. I can do that and have a release. So there's that. I would say that. Number two, I would say read. Of course, I've said that already, but I would say it again. Just drop into something. Enjoy it. Enjoy what someone else is doing. It's not the worst thing in the world to be reading a novel and be thinking, actually, you know what? It's the gears a job. It's like, I could do this. It's just remind yourself, just prompt yourself to be like, I could do this. Yeah, this got me excited again. This is fun. This is the kind. Maybe I could tell a story in this world or in this way. Nothing wrong with that, at least as a starting off point. But the other thing I wanted to say was picking up on something that I think is really important that Kirsten mentioned. It's about being real with other writers. That actually you have your low moments and you have your days where you will feel like a fraud and you will feel like you're telling people you're a writer, but actually you're not doing any writing whatsoever. And you can't really remember the last time you sat and went, oh, here is a work of, here's one for the ages. That feels like a long time ago. And you've got to be easy on yourself. I think go easy on yourself. Don't have those expectations of what it should look like. We've talked, and I know we were chatting beforehand about the process. And actually, there's something else that Kirsten said about what we're doing when we're working might not look like we're working, but you walk the dog and you start to problem solve something in Act 2. But equally, you just give yourself a little bit of freedom, a bit of space from a blank screen. And it might be a blank screen, and that might be looming and blinking at you and in an intimidating way. And go easy on yourself, because it's hard. It's meant to be fun. It's not meant to be hard. But it is hard if you want to make something of it, get to the end of something, have something to show for it. It is hard. It's creative labor. It's work. Sometimes it feels like that. You need to just go easy on yourself, because sometimes you have bad days at work.
Yeah, it's true. And I think a lot of people also have these like expectations they put on themselves, that
especially when we do this, when we say, do a prompt or do a this or do a that, like we've got all the answers, like we're so, you know what I mean? Like I've got stacks of novels here. I've just got to tidy them up and then I'll send them out and we're all good, and I've got a couple of scripts over here and I'm all good. I'm fine. We talk like this sometimes. We're like, just do a prompt or do this. Actually, sometimes you just don't feel like it, and it's not working, it's not happening, and that's okay,
Yeah, it's true. And I think as well, especially, when you're at the beginning, I guess more in those early stages of, starting to write and, you're kind of tackling, that novel for the first time. I think learning those can feel particularly because you don't have that experience to look back and be like, oh yeah, I remember it was like this, but I know if I can just get to this next bit, it's going to be okay. Just also kind of thinking like from the perspective of, if you do have the ambition to get your novel published, is there any advice you would give to first-time writers as to, I guess, how to go about that and any kind of like expectations they should set, and kind of drawing upon your own experiences as from the first times that you got published? What would you say to a budding author looking to kind of go down the same path? Kirsten?
I like to remind people that it's kind of a numbers game. I mean, it's not what we want to hear necessarily, but it's like the same sort of lottery game that we play when we are applying for a job, because it is a job, it's a business. And so we have to approach it as a business person, and it is a professional industry. And I think that being able to compartmentalize and understand, like, okay, when I'm seeking publishing, I am doing so as a representative of my creative work. I am, an industry of my own, and writing those really polished query letters and understanding how to do a synopsis really well and to talk about your work easily and with a lot of clarity. But also to know, like, perseverance is the name of the game, because you might be out there looking for a job and sending out resumes and you never hear back, or you go on interviews and it doesn't pan out. And it's that same kind of feeling. It's like, okay, I know there is going to be a home for my book, just like I will find the place where I can shine in, whatever I do for my job. And to just keep going. I like to kind of collect rejection stories from famous writers. There's all kinds of lists on them online.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I was talking to a student recently who was feeling a little discouraged, having gotten their first rejection. And I said, well, Marlon James just won a big award, and he was rejected 78 times for his first novel.
Yeah.
So you have to have really this kernel of faith inside of you that is going to keep you going.
Completely.
And, just having that self-belief. And I mean, one of the lucky things now is that there's so many options for writers. You can choose to go for one of the big four, a mainstream trade publisher. There's tons of amazing indie and micro presses that are doing all kinds of exciting work and looking for really different kinds of stories and voices.
Yeah.
They're very accessible. And self-publishing. If you're good at marketing, self-publishing is an option for a lot of people too.
Yeah.
So I think it's really understanding the balance between the professional and the creative, and know that you are going to get no's. And the no doesn't define you. The no is just a hurdle to jump over in that endless marathon that you're running.
I love how we still managed to stick on the same analogy the whole way through. We're doing well.
So applicable.
Yeah. But no, I think that's really, really good advice. And I think, it is important not to get really disheartened by those, first rejections, because like you said, it happens to everyone. And it's not a reason to give up. If anything, just kind of from it, find the motivation to just keep pursuing. And and I hear it's from other writers who always say they know loads of really talented writers, but it's the ones who persevere are the ones who get published. It's not always necessarily strictly about talent. It's about carrying on at it and not losing that kind of faith.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a long game. It's a long career. And you will be discouraged, and then you will be encouraged, and then you will be discouraged again. And that's the reality. You, as a writer, you write because you have no choice. And I'm a believer in that. I know that's sort of high-minded of us to talk like that, but I do think when you're a creative person of any kind, whether your intentions are to win a Booker Prize or you just want one person to read your thing, you're not bothered. It actually, it's not a choice. It's something you do. And that speaks again to practice. It's something that you're doing. As long as you are doing it, as long as you are writing, you are encouraging that little kernel, that little bit of you, that tiny thing inside that has the faith that the thing that you're writing will find someone somewhere. And as long as you're doing it, you'll be fine. You will be. If you stop doing it, that's when you're not fine. That's it. And it's just as simple as that. So anyone who's struggling as a writer, the answer is always right. Even if you don't do it today or tomorrow, the answer is always going to be just right.
Yeah, completely. It's just kind of switching topic a little bit. So obviously you've both worked on a lot of different creative writing courses, mentoring and tutoring upcoming authors. And now we're lucky enough to have you on Jericho Writer's Ultimate Novel Writing course. So I'm just curious, what is it that you're looking for when it comes to mentoring a new writer? And is there anything in particular that, makes a piece of writing stand out for you? Kirsten?
I really love someone who is unafraid to experiment, whether it's with form or voice or story ideas. I love that sense of pushing boundaries a little bit and pushing form. And I'm definitely, as I said in my bio, I'm all about amplifying marginalized voices and creating space for people that have felt traditionally excluded from publishing, because there's so much more room for us than there has been. And I just love a good story well told. I mean, I love unique ideas. I love somebody that can take a classic monster story and give it a new spin. You know, so I want to be excited by the work, and I really relish working with writers who have like that shine, and they're really excited about the work that they're doing, and they have that determination to tell the story that is burning inside them.
Yeah. Well, you've heard it here, folks. If you're interested in working with Kirsten and you think your writing might fit her bill, do check out our website. We posted the link in the comments. Gavin, what about you? What are you looking for?
Yeah, look, I was having this discussion with some colleagues recently, actually, about what we say to students in our workshops. Teach creative writing at Bath University, and I teach undergraduate and MA. So this really goes for the whole thing. But you know, I was being candid with them, for want of a better word, and I was saying, you know, I just kind of, you know, I'm a bit bored of it all. You know, I'm a bit bored. I want someone to shock me. You know, I want to open a document that someone shared in a workshop, and I want to be like shocked. I want to be like, what? This person's writing this? You know, I want that. Is that too much to ask? You know, I just want to be entertained. You know, I don't think that's too much to ask. So, you know, shock me. You know, like, oh, this is not boring. Wake me up a little bit. That's what I want.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know. That's how I feel.
It feels like you're opening Pandora's box there, Gavin.
I know. It's what we're saying. You know, we're saying,
be careful what you wish for.
If we say that, what will we get? You know, where does that go? But that's a problem of our times. I don't think that was the problem when I started writing. It feels more of a problem of our time. So then it's about how you approach that. But entertained, then. I'll go with entertained.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Yeah, I think that's more than fair. And I think, you know, you're right. I think there's a lot of kind of preoccupation among writers now that they need to write something that they know publishers want to sell, and it kind of gets in the way of people writing the thing that they want to write.
That's for sure something that a few minutes ago was sort of cooking in my mind. I was sort of thinking, I don't want to discourage, again, to use that word. I don't want to tell people, don't look at what's out there and see and try and write it, because there's a lot of logic to, hang on, I know what works. Can I do it? Or there's a craving for something. I think I can supply that. There's a lot to be said for doing that. At the same time, you want to go the other way sometimes and tell someone, don't try and second guess what someone will think about you and your work, because if you go down that road, again, the danger is you go nowhere and you don't write anything, and you think no one will want my story, no one will want what I've got to say, and that's a real problem if you end up there. You've got to believe that people want to hear your story and read your story, otherwise there's no point. You just write it, stick it in a drawer. So I don't kind of, again, it's that between the two places rather than one or the other. It's being able to be nimble enough to say, yeah, what does the market want, but also what's the story I want to tell, and what's getting me excited and passionate and interested in doing this thing for the next few weeks, few months, few years. So it's somewhere between the two, which is super helpful of me to say, don't do this, don't do that. Do something like in the middle, but shock me, but entertain me.
Well, I think it's also helpful to remember that storytelling is art, and art is incredibly subjective.
Yeah.
And, you know, what has deep meaning for one person is not going to be meaningful to another. And so you are looking for the people that respond to your art.
Yeah.
And really, if you keep that in mind, it's like there's always going to be somebody who, for example, you wear an unusual outfit. Somebody's going to be like, what are you doing? And then there's going to be people that are like, I love your style.
Right.
So you will find the people that love your style, but don't get discouraged by the people that don't.
But I don't tell my students that it's subjective. I never say that.
I do all the time.
I'm like, no, this is objective criteria, actually. This is not about whether I like it or not.
I think once you start submitting and you start getting responses back and you understand that, like, well, at least in America, my general understanding of it is with agents and publishers and editors, it's like they want to love your piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you might get a letter that's like, it's great. The story works really well, but it's not for me. I didn't love it.
Oh, I hate that.
And that's really
worst.
frustrating. Yeah, it feels like a personal rejection, but it's not.
I
It's
loved
just
it, but I just didn't love it enough,
Yeah.
I loved it, and it really worked, and you write beautifully, but I just wasn't passionate enough.
Oh, I know. It's like some date gone wrong. It's horrible.
I hate
I like
really
you, but I didn't like you in that way. It's like,
we had a great time. We have so much in common. I'm really attracted to you, but I don't want to see you again.
Yeah. And so it's like we all know those feelings, and we've all created ways to deal with them. So it's kind of the same experience, and just like keep your little fire, keep it burning and march forward into the darkness.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, I think that's a really good note to end on. I feel like we could talk for hours and hours, but I appreciate
into the darkness. Is that how we ended it?
March into the darkness with a little flame of hope.
Yeah, with a little flame of hope. Yeah, I can see
a little flame of hope.
Yeah, flame of hope.
Yeah, I feel like, and it's kind of, stayed on our theme of walking and running and now dating. So I think we've covered some very good analogies for the writing process in this conversation.
And when you're marching into the darkness, someone will fling a banana at you, and you'll be resuscitated to go on. So
exactly. Just learn to expect the banana and not be perturbed by it, and you'll be fine. So I think well, I just have to say thank you both so much for joining us. Everyone, if you're watching this post the live event, you've got any questions for Gavin and Kirsten, please drop them into the chat and we'll forward them on so we can collect their responses for you. If you are interested and intrigued to learn more and want to hear more fantastic analogies about writing, but also just being with a opportunity to be mentored by either of these wonderful writers, do check out our website and have a look at the Ultimate Novel Writing course and all that it has to offer. It's a 12-month course. It really takes you from start to finish with all the core components of how to write well, and also set you up to hopefully find success in your publishing journey, but we'll really be there throughout the 12 months kind of holding you accountable, and as we've said in this discussion, keeping that motivation up to keep going and hopefully finish your book within a year. So do have a look on our website if you're interested in learning more, and Gavin and Kirsten, hopefully we will get you back onto our channels soon, because this has been very fascinating but also incredibly entertaining as well, just speaking to you both. I think you've got so much experience and insights that I think more people want to hear about. We'll hopefully be doing this again soon. But any final words? Do we think marching into the darkness of a candle is the best word to leave it on, or would you any final?
I don't know, Gavin, do you have anything more inspiring than that?
I definitely can't top that. No way. Marching into the darkness with a flame of hope, and do not be perturbed by the banana, I think.
Yes,
the banana. That feels right. It feels like that sums up everything.
I think so.
I think so. I think we did.
Yeah.
We nailed it.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, thank you both so much. And hopefully we'll see you again soon. And thank you everyone for joining us. Wonderful.
Yes, thank you all.
Have a good rest of your day.